So as we're singing those words, God turn it around, God turn it around, God turn it around, I can't help but sit there and think about a conversation that I had with my oldest brother, who's a pastor in my hometown. Over the course of the past week, we were able to go home from Waukene, my hometown, for fall break. And as we were talking, he asked a question. He's actually been going through a series with the congregation there, kind of digging through this question. But his question was, I'm going to rephrase it just a little bit to go with that song. But how do we pray, God turn it around? How do we claim that we follow Jesus? How do we call on his name and then live like hell? How do we come to him and say, God, please do these things, or God, I give you everything that I have, God, all these promises, and then turn around and live like hell? Now, I understand that you might be sitting there and you're already thinking, well, I don't live like hell. Like hell, living like hell, that's the people that are going to the bars at night and getting super drunk, and then they're going out and they're doing all sorts of things they shouldn't do, and they're causing all the distractions and all the disruptions and all those kinds of things. I don't live like hell. But the conversation that I had with him was, honestly, I was going to bring it up this morning anyway, and then as we're singing those songs, I'm like, no, that is so fitting for what we're singing right now, that we're coming in and we're praying. You know, I'm thinking about what's going on over in the Middle East, and we're praying, God, turn all that around. As we live like hell, turn all that around. And again, you're thinking, I don't live like hell. Well, let me lay out for you just a little bit of what I mean. As we've been going through these conversations of this is how God intended things to be. And we've been looking at Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 and the purpose that he's put in our lives and the way that he created humanity to be and what our purpose was, all those things, and how far we've come from that. You know, as I make this claim and as my brother makes this claim that we go out and we live like hell, this is what I mean by that. So I'm gonna call out a few people in our congregation. I won't call you by name, maybe, because I don't want to embarrass you, but we have a young person in our congregation who's really, really fast. We have a lot of really fast people, but we have one in particular who, he just won state in cross country. He's a little fast. I'm sure none of you know who I'm talking about, so I'm not going to embarrass anybody with this. But he's really, really fast. And he won state, and he set personal records this year. He almost set the state record this year. When you compare him to other people from around the state, seeing that he won, he's obviously really good, right? Could we all agree that this individual whom we are not naming this morning is a really good runner? Yes? Do you think he's ready for the Olympics? I'll look at his parents and act like I'm not, but do you think he's ready for the Olympics yet? No? So there's people better than him out there. As good as he is, there's people better than him out there. Okay. So we have another individual, and I won't name his name either, but sometimes his parents throw on these like highlight reels of his 360 dunks on Facebook, and he's really good at basketball. And I think we would all look at him and we would say, man, he's really good at basketball. And actually, I'm not going to look at him. I'm just going to glance past him every now and then, and you all will just have to guess which person I'm talking about. But as good as he is at basketball, and I think we could all kind of say, yeah, he's a lot better than, well, maybe, I won't go definitively all of us in this room, but I would say probably all of us in this room. I've never been able to pull off a 360 dunk on a trampoline, and he does this in real life. Are you ready to take on Steph Curry? No, not yet? I mean, I know they say LeBron is like the best ever. I don't agree with that, but we'll throw him out there. Are you ready to take on LeBron? Okay, no, I'm not looking at anybody in particular. There is somebody shaking their head no, but I'm not looking at, okay, so there's people out there that are better. It's good, and I mean, all sorts of potential. We have a young man who is really good at math. I'm told by his classmates, get some awards and everything. Actually, I do need your help a little bit. I'm gonna have to look at you a little bit on this one. Could you solve for me, would you agree that you're decent at math? He's being modest. He's showing some humility this morning. That's good because, you know, we have up here on our walls, walk humbly together with Jesus. So I'm glad that you're walking humbly this morning. Could you solve for me, actually, I got to look up what the name of this thing even is. A Diophantine equation. You can't solve, do you know what it is? So you can't solve for me x cubed plus y cubed plus z cubed equals k, where k equals any number between 1 and 100? No, probably not. So you'd say there's probably some people who are better at you than math? Yeah? Okay. That's okay. It's all right. I looked up this week because I was just curious. We're going to go back to running for just a little bit. I looked up this week what the average mile time is for an American male. And it actually, if you find the Army physical fitness test results, it actually breaks it out really well by age group even. So that made me feel really good because I could find my age group. My age group, the average American male between the ages of 37 to 41, will run a per mile time of over 2 miles of 6 minutes, of 9 minutes and 45 seconds. I looked at that and I felt pretty good. I was like, hey, that puts me in the top 50%. I can run 9:45 per mile over the course of, now I can't run 2 miles in 9:45. That's ridiculous. You young people who can do that and you older people, that's crazy. I can't do that. But I felt pretty good about that. And then I looked at the top 1%. And I won't give the time, but I felt less good about myself. I realized, okay, I'm in the top 50% as to how fast I can run, but I am a long ways away from the top 1%, which is what I've said for a long time. I would say that by average standards, I can run a decent mile. By runners' standards, my mile time is not very fast. We can be really good at something compared to our peers, compared to those who we would consider average, compared to those who are around us, and still be far, far, far from the best. And still be considered, if we were put in a room of the best runners or the best basketball players or the greatest mathematical minds or put in whatever else you want to there and be put in a room of the best and brightest at all those things, we can go from feeling, I'm pretty good, to all of a sudden, wow, I'm not good at all. When we put ourselves next to the standard bearers, we realize that we're not quite as good. And with those things especially, hey, that's okay. You don't have to be the best runner or the best basketball player or the best mathematician, especially when you're in high school, in middle school, or elementary school. You don't have to be the best and brightest at everything. You guys, man, those three in particular that I didn't mention this morning, like you have all kinds of potential. And there is nothing saying that someday you can't be the standard bearer of the best and the brightest in those areas. But we're not there yet. For those of us who have aged a little bit more, we can probably at this point safely say we're not going to be the best runners and the best basketball players and the brightest mathematical minds that we ever come across. And that's okay. But when I'm talking about living like hell, one of the traps I think that we so often fall into, one of the biggest traps when it comes to finding our purpose in life, one of the biggest traps when it comes to showing others what it means to follow Christ, is we fall into the I'm good trap. We fall into the trap of, compared to those around me, I'm pretty good. Like, I make it to church at least 75% of the time. I open up my Bible at least 15 to 20 times a year, and that puts me above average for a human being. I don't cuss very often. I don't drink very often. I don't smoke very often. I don't, all those things that used to be bigger than they are now, and they're still, debatable. I don't steal. I don't murder. I don't do all those different things. I'm good because I compare myself to all the people around me. Compared to everybody else, I'm really good at this Christian game. I've got good morals compared to the opposite side of the political aisle. I'm really, really good. And we fall into this trap over and over and over again of, I'm good. But the question becomes, I'm good compared to who? Compared to what? I'm good compared to the person sitting at the other end of the pew. I'm good compared to my classmates. I'm good compared to my coworkers. I'm good compared to the rest of society. You're good compared to who? That's how we fall into a trap of, I'm a Christ follower, but I live like hell. Because God didn't ask for good. In fact, he told us that good was something that we would never, ever reach. Psalm 14:3 says, they have all turned aside, they have together become corrupt. There is none who does good. No, not even one. In Luke 18:9, Jesus says to him, why do you call me good? For no one is good except God alone. In Romans 3:23, Paul writes to the church in Rome, and he says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Every last one of us. It still gets me, I brought it up last week, that we get into certain funeral services or whatever, and there's talk of, man, he was such a good man, or she was such a good woman. And I understand what's being said there, and I'm not opposed to saying it in the midst of a funeral service or a memorial service, or whatever words we want to use for that particular time together. I get it, but at the same time, it's not true. From the standards of the standard bearer, it's not true. No one is good. Not a single person is good. See, we measure that by everybody else around that person. Well, they were very generous compared to the people that they live around. They were very loving compared to the people they were living around. But compared to the standard bearer, being Jesus himself, being God the Creator, would you still stack them up as saying they were good? I mean, I hope not. I hope so, but realistically, I know not. Because next to the standard bearer, we all fall incredibly, incredibly short. No matter how much we sit there and we say, but I read my Bible all the time, but I go to church all the time. I've never murdered anybody. Until you start reading those words of Jesus where he talks about even our anger is murder in the heart. Or I've never committed adultery, and until you start reading those words of Jesus where he says that lust in the heart is the same as committing adultery. I've never done. Until you compare yourself to the standard bearer, you're good. And we fall into the trap over and over and over again. And we live our lives, we walk around and we tell people, hey, you need to believe in Jesus, you need to follow Jesus. And they look at our life and they go, but your life isn't all that different from mine. I mean, okay, I get it. You do some things differently than I do, but hey, I do a lot of good things too. Compared to you, and then they can come up, most people can come up with some area of their lives where they would look at you and say, I'm better than you are at this. See, living like hell is anything short of giving everything to Jesus. Living like hell is giving anything short of giving everything to Jesus. And the punishment for that, for every last person, is death. And I don't just mean death as in we put somebody in the ground or we cremate them and their body ceases to live. I mean death as an eternal death, an eternal punishment. And I understand that we look at that sometimes and we think, man, that doesn't seem fair. I don't like that. I love the way Greg Koukl, I think that's how you say his last name, Greg Koukl writes in his book Tactics, where he begins to ask questions of people who would, they would say criminals deserve to be punished. And a lot of us in this room would say that somebody who steals something, they deserve to be punished. Depending on what they stole, we might change what the punishment is, but we believe that somebody who steals deserves to be punished, or somebody who murders deserves to be punished. Somebody who breaks a moral law deserves to be punished in some way or another. And the more we dig into that, the more we have to eventually admit we have all broken moral laws. I remember being a kid and really wanting that candy bar in the grocery store and initially hiding that candy bar behind all the other candy bars that were gross so that the next person would come along and they wouldn't be able to find my candy bar so that I could come back later and buy it, but eventually getting a little bit more bold and realizing it's a whole lot easier if I just put that candy bar in my pocket. I'm not going to say I did it a lot, and I'm not going to say I'm proud of it. But I broke a moral law. I deserved punishment over that. And that's a minor one in most people's eyes. Most people would look at stealing a candy bar. In fact, you live in some of the cities, you can steal $600 worth of stuff. We see it on the news all the time. And we'll let you go. So people would look at that and they say, that's not that big of a deal. But it's still breaking the law. All of us have broken the moral law. Maybe, well, I would say we've all broken the law of the land too. If I went by a show of hands and I asked Trooper Brock to close his eyes, I would say most of us would admit that we go, actually he's not in here anymore, so we're good. He's out there keeping us safe. I would say we would probably all say at some point we have gone over the speed limit. I remember being the high school kid who got pulled over and the police officer coming up to my window and saying, "Do you deserve a ticket?" And saying, "Well, yes, I probably do," because I was speeding. I was racing on the 4 lanes in Waukene, Kansas. I mean, I was in a car that would barely break the speed limit, so it's not like I was racing that well. But I answered her honestly, and then she kindly gave me a ticket. I thought honesty was supposed to get you out of those things. I was wrong. All of us. And until we accept that, we will continue to withhold from God. We will continue to act like we can still take care of certain things in my life. We will continue to walk around going, I can't find purpose in my life. I can't find that satisfaction that people tell me about, because we are still telling ourselves, I'm good. I don't need God in this area, or I don't need others in this area because I'm good. And we will continue to live like hell. The punishment for that, like I said, is death. And we might not agree with it. We might think that that's extreme for some of the things that we've done. Because again, we're comparing ourselves to everybody else, not comparing ourselves to the standard bearer, not comparing ourselves to the best, not comparing ourselves to perfection. We're comparing ourselves to everyone else and saying, well, I shouldn't deserve what they get because I'm better than them. Yeah, but you are so far, I am so far short of the standard that I'm supposed to be reaching for. And whether we find it fair or not, the hard news of it is when you go into court, and hopefully you don't have to, but when you go into court and the judge hands down the sentence, yes, I get it, in America we have an appeals process and we can walk through that. Eventually the appeals run out and you have to fulfill the sentence that was put down by the judge. Whether you agree with it or not, whether you're sitting there telling your family members that it's not fair, it doesn't matter. You fulfill the sentence that was laid down by the judge. When all else has been exhausted, you have to do it, whether you think it's fair or not. And God says, here's the sentence. The sentence for what you've done is death. But Jesus. Because that's when he gives us a different way to fulfill that sentence. Romans 3, we started there in 3:23. But in 3:24, it continues on. If I can find my words here. Yet God, in his grace, freely makes us right in his sight. He did this through Christ Jesus when he freed us from the penalty for our sins. For God presented Jesus as the sacrifice for sin. With those words that Paul writes to the church in Rome, what did you do, or what did I do to be freed from the penalty of our sin? I'm going to give you a hint. It starts with an N and it ends with an nothing. Nothing. We did the wrong. God created all of this to work a certain way. We came along. We did something different. And we can finally admit that we're not good. Then God says, I've got you covered. I've got another plan for fulfilling your sentence. And that plan is my son, and my son's going to give up everything. He's going to give up his life for you. He's the ultimate bail bondsman. He is the ultimate loan cancellation. It's gone. You don't have to pay it anymore. I sent that for you, but Jesus gets to come along and Jesus gets to set the terms for what it takes to receive what he's given us. And he requires everything. Oh, you say, well, that doesn't sound fair. That doesn't sound right. Well, you don't have to take it. That's the beautiful part of it is he doesn't say, no, you will take my son's offering. You will allow my son to fulfill your sentence. He says, no, there's a second option for you. You can choose death. You can choose a life of constantly looking for purpose. You can choose a life of constantly being dissatisfied. You can choose a life of constantly feeling like there's something that you're missing. You can choose that. It's on the table for you. Or you can choose to have that taken away. You can choose my son instead. But he's going to require everything. In Mark 8:34, it says, if anyone, this is Jesus talking, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And in Matthew 19, we read a story about, we call him the rich young ruler, but we read a story about this young man who comes along and he's incredibly wealthy and he comes to Jesus and he says, what do I have to do to inherit this eternal life? Jesus hadn't died on the cross yet. Jesus hadn't risen from the dead yet. He comes along and he says, what do I have to do? And Jesus says, you got to follow the commands. He said, I've done all these. And then Jesus says, if you want to be perfect, go sell your possessions and give to the poor and you will have treasure in heaven. This is what you have to do. You have to get rid of all of this, and then I'll give you life. I'll give you life for all of eternity. I'll give you all the things that you say you want. You're trying to get them here. I've got a better way for you. Then come and follow me. I love the way Lisa TerKeurst kind of summarizes this story in her book, I'll Begin Again on Monday, where he says, Jesus meant this for any of us who wallow in whatever abundance we have. You know, we often read this story as being all about rich people, good luck. Rich people sell everything. Oh no, this is for all of us. For all of us who sit there and we struggle to give up whatever control area it is in our lives, whatever spot it is that we're like, Jesus, you can have everything except this. Jesus, I've got this one covered. Jesus, I'm good. For all of us who wallow in whatever abundance we have, Jesus says, let it go, give it up, and then you can come and you can follow me. Then you can come and you can have this life that you hear about on Sundays and that you hopefully hear about from all of my Christ followers. Then you can have this life that you read about when you open your scriptures. Then you will have this life that you know deep down is there, but you just can't seem to find. After you've given up whatever it is that you're trying to hold on to because I'm good. I've got it taken care of. In Matthew 11 and 28 through 30, Jesus says, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. As we walk through life, and we're searching, we're chasing this purpose that we've been talking about for the past month. And we feel so burdened down trying to figure this all out. Young people burdened down by trying to figure out what they're supposed to do with the rest of their lives. People who are in their careers burdened down because they find no satisfaction in their career and they can't meet their bills. And retired people burdened down because they're trying to figure out, what am I supposed to do now? We walk around, we're burdened down because we're trying to figure it all out, and he says, give it to me. Stop thinking that you're good enough to figure it all out on your own, and give it to me, because my burden is light. My yoke is easy. I want to show you what you're intended to do. I want to show you the purpose that you were created to have. I died on a cross, and I rose from the dead so that you would trust me enough, so that you would be willing, so that you could see where life truly comes from, so that you wouldn't have to walk around with all of these burdens on your shoulders. That's why I did all that. But we fall into our trap. I'm good. I'm good. He asks us for everything. There's really only two options. We can choose death. We can choose the life that we've been living where we're searching and we're chasing after purpose and we just can't find it. It's there as an option. Or we can choose life. We can choose to give him what it is that he's asking for and receive what it is that he's offering right back to us. There is no middle. There is no, I'm going to follow him, but live like hell. It's all or it's nothing. And what he asks us to do with that everything, he says, therefore go and make disciples of all the nations. Wherever you go, whatever job it is that you have, whatever classes you're taking, whatever college you go to, whether you're retired or whether you're full-time or whether you're part-time, it doesn't matter. Your job is the same. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. The purpose is laid right out there for us. He said it differently in Genesis chapter 1 where he says, be fruitful and multiply. Now Jesus comes along and says, now go and multiply. And wherever it is that you are. Paul says it this way to the church in Corinth where he says, all this is from God who reconciled us to himself through Christ. Whew, that's the first time I've ever actually fallen off that step. I know a lot of you have been like, he's going to do it someday. It finally happened. Who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. It gave us the ministry of reconciling others to himself. You know what another way of saying that is? He told us to go and make disciples. He told us to go and make other people who will give everything to Jesus. Not everything to what we believe is important, but everything to Jesus. Not go and make themselves like us because we're not good. But like him. And giving everything to him. And reminding ourselves, hey, we're not good, but that's why he came in the first place. I love getting to have the conversations that I have when I go, when I say home, I consider this home. Don't take that the wrong way. When I go to my hometown, when I go and I hang out with my parents and my brothers and family, I love the conversations I get to have. Man, when Jared, my older brother, when he started talking about that, like, man, that's the trap that we fall into. We have the choice to make. We can play the I'm good game. We can play the I'll give everything but this game. Or we can ask ourselves honestly the question, what is it that I am wallowing in my abundance of? What is it that I am holding back? And is it possible that that's why I don't feel the purpose that he's promised me? That's why I don't feel that peace that he's promised me. That's why I still feel like I'm carrying these heavy burdens, because I haven't actually given him this. I'm saying that I'm following Christ, but I'm living out something differently, because to follow Christ, he said, no, you've got to give it all up. You got to hand it all to me, and I'll show you where to go from there. There are a lot of different things that we hang on to. And we're going to start over the course of the next several weeks. We've been looking at our purpose. Now I want us to look at some of the things that hold us back from truly reaching that. We hold on to I'm not even going to start listing the things. We hold on to so much. And so this week, as we get ready for our series next week, and our conversations next week, I want you to ask two questions. One, am I giving everything to Jesus? And if the answer is no, what in hell is it that you want anyway? God, thank you for bringing us here this morning. Thank you for showing us how we can find purpose, how we don't have to chase and chase and chase. And God, I know it seems like it's so much because you ask for everything. But man, when I know that when we see what we get in return and when we experience what we get in return, we realize that our everything isn't actually all that much. Because you give us back so much more than we give to you. God, as a congregation, I pray that you would help us see where we're holding back. Whether it's where we're holding back from each other and being there for one another, or where it's holding back from going into our community and making disciples and loving our neighbors, that you would show us where are we holding back. God, thank you for your life. Thank you for overcoming death. Thank you for taking our sentence. God, thank you for taking our not good and saying, I can make it good, so that we can live that life that you've promised us. Amen.